Well, so on our second day, we can't say that we didn't get to engage with anybody. And we can't say that we didn't get to do all of the things that we needed to do. Because, man, that was, I'm glad we didn't turn it into an incident by just going to see a couple of buildings. Good thing is being 1 mile away from transit and having a 1 day pass that covers everything, that makes it a lot easier to get out of the house.
Because we tried moving around in London with the Oyster card on our first day there, but we soon found out that it was more convenient to buy a day pass for each day, even though it was like 19
It was like 16 pounds.
16 pounds for each day. And so, yeah.
But considering all the places we went, and the fact that we didn't have to use it every single time, I felt so much better with that.
Yeah. No, definitely it was a good choice.
Yeah. So
September 20.
Yeah. We got to go to London Bridge, but it wasn't falling down. It was a cool station with a lot of good architecture, and because we got lost going around it the first day, we knew exactly where we were going the second day. It was awesome. That was actually one of the best parts. It's like, okay, we know that whatever we need to do, we can get back to London Bridge and get back home.
Yeah, that was very convenient because it was a London Bridge station. It's visually, it's a very, very modern station, very beautiful, very futurist. It's also not reconversion, but remodeling of an old building. Very beautiful and very, very well located, and so
we saw a bunch of buildings that were like 20th century and then had a little piece on top of it. That's really what London Bridge station is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like
we saw that many times.
Outside of King's Cross.
Outside of King's Cross.
And
that's more like a trend than an anomaly, especially in Europe, because they have so much historic landmarks, so many heritage declared buildings, so many buildings that they cannot touch because of their architectural significance, their cultural significance. So architects in Europe are faced with a very serious dilemma. Like, how do we repurpose 19th century buildings for 21st century needs?
You know what we do in the United States with an old building? Tear it down, make something new. Tear it down, make something new. But what about this? No, tear it down.
No, that's a thing.
I know, it really is. And it's one of the reasons why there actually was one more opportunity for me to do community engagement with Austin. And it was about historic sites. And I was just like, you tore down half of these sites already. You've torn half of Austin down to basically tell the story that you want to tell. You can't pretend to go back in time and ask people what they think about it. That doesn't mean anything now. Unless you're going to build restorative buildings, that's irrelevant. So yeah.
That's what... in short, long story short, that's what differentiates architecture in the States and in Europe. Definitely. That comes with its own complications and advantages.
Right.
because, for example, in the United States, they can uh, well, how can I put it? Experiment
Right.
with new ways of building without the necessity to still hold the past,
To preserve.
to
Yeah.
preserve it. And later in the episode, we will actually compare three buildings that are old buildings repurposed, two of them here in Europe with very different results, and one in Austin, Texas.
Yes, of
But yeah,
course. So our first site, as provided by the architect, was Lloyd's building, and Lalo, apparently I can't let you go into buildings by yourself anymore because you're going to alert the security.
well, the first building that we saw, that we visited after leaving London Bridge Station, it's Lloyd's of London building by Richard Rogers. It's a very, very significant office building in downtown London because it's high tech architecture in London, especially during the 80s. It has most of its most relevant examples in England. This one, fantastic building, the with all its guts outside, because this what makes important this building is that, as opposed to the traditional way in which we build architecture, where we try to
Hide the HVAC.
Yes, we try to hide we try to hide the infrastructure of the building, basically the veins and the bones, and we try to hide them behind glass and concrete and steel, while as the approach of this type of architecture is no, expose it, show it, show the guts of the building, put them outside as the skin of the building. Very, very beautiful building, and something funny. Two funny things happened at that visit.
First, before we got there was another group of people who I heard them speaking just a little bit, and I correctly guessed that they were Japanese. Yay, linguistic interests. And I said, "Oh yeah." I said, "Oh, are you tourists?" And they said, "Architects." And I said, he's an architect too. And there was an architect moment where we were all together appreciating the building.
I remember it differently. I remember that I saw them and I didn't notice that you asked them to, but I noticed that they were all dressed in black and they were photographing the building, and immediately I thought, and I asked them, "Architects?" And they said, yeah. And I was like, of course. And they asked me where I was from, and yeah, that was an interesting. Normally, you are the one who talks to people, and I am a bit more shy. But knowing that they were architects, I didn't have a problem trying to approach them.
Well, I don't speak AutoCAD.
Actually, the AutoCAD, the screen of the AutoCAD is black too. Architects, we love black.
But you were trying to you weren't trying to go into the building. You were literally trying to go into a courtyard.
Well, of course, because it's a building. That building is owned by Lloyd's of London Bank, and so I knew that there was no way that I could get inside of the building. But outside of the building, the spaces that it has, it doesn't have a barrier that prevents you from getting closer. So I
think there are bicycles parked there too.
Yes, and even it has a half of a level is below the level of the sidewalk, and it has a restaurant which was closed or empty. I don't know.
All right.
But so I approached the building on that side, and I tried to get to all of the quote unquote public areas. I got as close to the building as to glass door that I thought it was the door for the parking lot or something. And so I walked some steps below the ground, and I saw the door, and I saw that I read that it said emergency exit, so I didn't push it, and so I turned my way. I turned back, and I was on my way out when this guard came from the inside of the building on the other side of the glass door, and she opened the door, and while I was heading out, and then another guard was waiting for me upstairs, and they asked me, "What are you doing?" And she told me with an English accent, "You just activate all the alarms on the building," and I was oh shoot.
In the courtyard.
In the courtyard,
Like outside, not in the building.
Not in the building. And I said I didn't even touch the door. I just anyway.
So banks are protected.
Banks are protected.
Banks
are
you
protected.
cannot touch banks.
You
not
cannot
even
touch
the
banks.
idea of touching
No,
banks. They
you don't do that.
Be on you like stink on cheese.
They're gonna be on your. Can I say ass?
You can say ass just because it's my podcast.
They're gonna be on your ass.
Our podcast. But no, and so the thing is, because I didn't see you, and then all of a sudden, I didn't all of a sudden have to go to the bathroom, but I felt like it was time for me to be heading towards the bathroom. And so, and one thing about a lot of public spaces is that there are no bathrooms. I'm certainly not going to try and go into a bank or an office building in a country I'm not a citizen of to see if there's a bathroom. But basically, I made it clear that it's like, our first step is to find bathroom. And which is actually, now that I think about it, the main reasoning behind my wanting to find a bus to get to our next site, the Barbican, because the walk was great. And you're like, oh, but walking you get to appreciate. And I'm sitting here like, I'm trying to think about everything except not going to the bathroom. And then when we went to the Barbican, you said, hey, and it's like a whole nother world. And like they actually put a school and a library and all of these things within the Barbican because it was supposed to be its own little community. And the second I saw a library, I said, my first thought was bathroom. Mm-hmm. And so we went to the library step, and they said, oh yeah, the bathrooms are downstairs and upstairs. And I'm sitting here like, wow, imagine being in such a situation. Now, good news is that there were gender neutral toilet stalls and urinals, which is lovely because those are actually the fastest bathrooms to go through. Yeah, like there's never a line for gender neutral toilet stalls.
And I probably will say that men are cleaner and men keep gender neutral bathrooms in a better state because
you're nervous.
They are nervous of well, since we're kids, we always our mom always tells us like, put down the seat on the toilet. You forgot to put down the seat on the toilet. And so we men behave better in bathrooms that are gender neutral because of that, probably. I don't know. That's my theory.
Well, and not only that, but again, as somebody who has an overactive bladder, uh, bathrooms are also very important to me.
Yeah.
It's made a big difference in endurance racing and just kind of how I live my life. People will be surprised that I won't drink anything until I know I'm going to be in a certain place for a few hours, and then I will drink everything
Yeah.
in sight just because I know that I will be safe.
Yeah, very beautiful bathrooms. Very interesting architectural features in the bathrooms, like the way the that you should press the restroom, the way the water to wash your hands, the way you got it, the soap. It even had a feature where to pump the water, you had to press it with your foot. I don't
I
know if
missed
I,
that one.
there was a point in which to pump the water through the faucet, you had to pump it with your feet.
Huh.
I was like, wow, and that was original from the building. That was very interesting.
So why are we talking so much about bathrooms when we're talking about a site?
Well, for example, uh, we do that because
Well, oh, that's
I
awesome.
am showing you the video right now. It was so interesting to me that I recorded a video.
Hey, it's worth it.
The Barbican is basically a maze. Like, yeah, I was also very disoriented at first. They told you that, oh, there's either bathrooms upstairs or downstairs. There were ramps all over the place. That guy,
Stairs all over the
stairs all over the
place.
place. It was a maze. It was a maze. For me, it was a wonderland of brutalism, of brutalist architecture. But for you, you were more interested in finding a bathroom.
But I am not the only one who is interested in finding a bathroom because you found this beautiful historical presentation that said that workers actually went on strike
Yes.
because there wasn't a place for them to go back to the bathroom while building the Barbican.
Wow. That was a surprise to me. Uh, when I studied architecture, we never mentioned the social aspects of how the buildings were made. We tend to overlook that, and fortunately, the Barbican has an exhibition space where they exhibit the ugly part of the construction of that place, the part that nobody talks about, which is the exploitation, racism, and most nasty aspects of how to get something like that built. There was this particular photo of a worker, basically with a I don't know the name of that tool. It's
A jackhammer.
a jackhammer, with very basic protection, just some eye protection and a handkerchief to protect him from the dust. But they even have an exhibited a pair of shoes with holes in the soles that were left hidden in one part of the construction. I then realized that these workers were exploited, uh, like they weren't important. They if they even unionized or tried to demand better working conditions, they were not only fired, but they were blacklisted so that they wouldn't be able to get a job in London for just for raising their voices. Like, come on, like
Is that a thing? Do you think that kind of thing would have happened in Mexico?
Of course, and it still happens. Of course, it does.
Well, and I say that because like there's so much building going on in Mexico.
Yeah,
So I would think that it isn't it. I would think that it would be next to impossible to get blacklisted just because there's so many people who will use just about anybody.
yeah, but it happens. Yeah, like
There's also word of mouth. Y'all are
there's
much better
also
at word of
yeah,
mouth than we are because we
eh,
don't talk to anybody in the United States in our bubbles. No.
yeah. No, it happens, and basically, what happens is they normally work for a contractor, and that contractor knows other contractors, and they basically share their workers. They pass them like tools from one
Right.
another, and they can also
Choose not to pass
choose
them.
not to pass them. Yeah, and basically the ones who are more like the ones who talk talk back the less are the ones who get the jobs.
Well, and I speaking of talk less, I so basically while I'm while you're basically taking pictures because you have the nice cameras that do the wonderful things and make the magic happen, I am usually looking for a place to rest because I, like you, see a lot of things that are worth talking about either here on the blog and and so I'm often looking for places to rest, which is not complicated since we walked about 10 miles, 10 to 11 miles a day, looking at all of our sites. And and so while we were at the Barbican, I found this bench and there was a shortage of benches. And I thought about putting my headphones in, but I was like, you know what? I'm in meditative mode. I was in front of a fountain. It was basically between 4 and 5, and I was like, hey, this is a great open space. And there was a woman who was looking for a place to sit, and I said, hey, you can sit there. This was my mistake. I accept that this was my mistake. But I figured, oh, well, somebody will sit on the other end of the bench and they will be doing them, checking their phone. This lady wanted to talk. This lady wanted to talk. That is, ironically, a big thing with Black women in public spaces.
I didn't know that until you told me.
Look, and what's interesting is that I would tell people this when I was contracting, and I said, look, it's very easy to do community engagement. All I have to do is sit still long enough, and somebody will come talk to me, and that is usually what happens, especially with Black women, because we're considered the counselors and mothers of the world, which is also how we've been used. And so this woman came and she was talking about how basically everybody needs to work hard and stop blaming everybody else, and you should only look at yourself, and all of these rich people are brilliant. And as somebody from the United States, I have heard this story so many times. And there's only so many times that you can hear it before you're just like, oh my dear goodness, please stop talking. Because that's also the reason why there's a lot of violence and nobody likes each other. But one thing that she did say that was useful, because I always think that there is something useful that you can gain from a conversation, is that she's from Turkey. And she has not been back to Turkey since 2019 because she said, look, it's a mess. There are just way too many social issues. And that was good information for us because we had considered continuing to Turkey, but because, and no, it's not just some random lady, but ironically, I think when we were coming home that night and we were getting food, we actually did see that something had just happened. There were some protests, and so we're like, oh, okay, I guess we'll take the hint. So yeah. But other than that, it was just this lady talking to me for literally the second you left, the second I told you I was sitting
I saw her.
there,
Yeah.
until the second I was saying, we gotta go. And I really was saying we gotta go because of the sunset, but I was also really ready to go.
Actually, I noticed because I don't know how much time it passed, but I was running out of battery on my phone, and I thought I need to see how Stephanie's doing before running out of battery. And I was at a point in all of that Barbican maze. It was a bridge from where I could see the fountain. The Barbican has a quote unquote like a heart in the middle of all the development.
That's actually a great way to describe it.
Yeah, it's a huge courtyard. Huge. It's actually two.
Yeah.
And these two courtyards are connected by a huge fountain, enormous fountain. And so I was taking photographs of that from that bridge, and I checked on you sometimes, and you were wearing a red T-shirt, which made it easier.
You're welcome.
And I noticed that she was talking to you, but you were texting on your phone, and I
normally don't do that.
You normally don't. When you talk to people, you are there. You don't have your phone in the middle. And that's when I thought, she's had it. She's had it. I am going back. I am going back because otherwise, something bad.
Exactly. No, because otherwise, because it'll get cranky.
Yeah.
And I'm not perfect.
You are not cranky ever, but when you are, I try to avoid it.
No, and what was fascinating is that when we went to the Brunswick Center, which was our last site for the day, really, I saw exactly the same scenario playing out. I was literally sitting on a bench next to these two women, this older woman talking to this black woman who had a bag full of groceries. So basically her day was done. Mm-hmm. She just thought, okay, I'd sit down. Yeah. And she was saying very little. This older woman is going on and on and on and on and on. And I was trying to surreptitiously get a picture. And then the black woman finally stood up and left, and that's the picture that I actually caught on my blog and posted. And when she was walking away, I actually asked the black woman. I said, "Were you with her?" And she said no. And I said, the exact same thing happened to me at the Barbican. Have a nice night. And because I knew that her social battery, like, even if we were going to share that Black Women United moment, she was done. But she smiled and walked home, because that is basically the principle of Black people in public spaces is we need to be controlled. And if we are not being controlled, then somebody will go in and try to make it their business to make sure that we are under control. And so that was nuts.
My God.
But and at the same time, it's like it makes me feel good that it's not just an American moment. That actually happens on the other side in the utopia that they say Europe is. Because
immediately she understood what you meant.
Exactly.
That there was that like sorority moment, Black sorority moment. That building, the one that you just mentioned,
Brunswick, yeah.
Yeah, Brunswick Center reminded me a lot to the building that we saw the day before, the Alexandra
Ainsworth, yeah.
because both of them are apartment buildings arranged in a way that they are like in a slope, and so the section of the building is very similar, but
They put a nasty mall in the bottom of this
yes,
one. They put a nasty mall,
yes,
nasty exclusive mall. Like they have a great platform
yeah,
that you clearly have to be a resident to access. So, okay, yay, at least they get some of their own space. But the rest of it is privatized space.
yeah,
And privatized space means I can't really be here without somebody questioning why I'm here without consuming something.
yeah,
And it's very uncomfortable to be in spaces like that.
yeah. It was definitely, I enjoyed way better the Alexandra State building, because in that building we got to see the dynamics of the people living there. There we witnessed a lot of interaction between neighbors, a lot of life, basically multi generational.
People coming home, people going to work.
Yeah. While as in the Brunswick Center, I think the people who were living there weren't engaging a lot with the dynamics that were taking place on the ground floor. Very, very different.
And I see why they have it, right? Because they're trying to make sure that a space makes money. But the problem is that when everything has to make money and a lot of money, well, then you kind of take the personality out of a location. And people feel like if they don't have money, then they don't deserve to be in a space.
Yeah.
Like I love your description of being in Times Square. Where you're like, I've never felt as poor as when I was in Times Square. Because anybody who's been to Times Square in New York knows there's advertisements constantly. Everybody is just there, and it's just, and again, if you don't have money, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, because everybody's walking around with shopping bags.
Right.
Uh, Even the artists that are performing on Times Square, uh, they seem to have a pretty much established life, and actually make a living out of it, like the Naked Cowboy,
Oh, right.
or and so on.
But no, and speaking of transitional spaces, then our last day was really interesting because basically the first and last sites we went to reminded me of Seaholm, which is Seaholm Power Plant in Austin. And I actually did some research on that, kind of looking at the conversations that went through, because the Seaholm Power Plant was at least one of the predecessors to the Holly Power Plant. And the Holly Power Plant was a really contentious power plant in East Austin that basically said, you're going to have to power the city even though it gives your children cancer. And so when they did Seaholm, they were like, well, it's going to be next to the library. It's going to have bus rapid transit next to it. It's going to be very walkable. And it is. But the housing that is next to the Seaholm power plant is very, very expensive. Like, no one's getting into that housing unless basically they work for the protected banks. Like, it is absolutely ridiculous. I actually had a friend who lived in the downtown area near that area, and he said back when he was just finishing law school, and he said, yeah, getting the information about median family income apartments that are within these buildings, because that's how they sell them to the city. They say, oh, these will be affordable. This little tiny percentage will be affordable. And he said it's almost impossible to find out which units there are, or that there are those units. So it's a bunch of rich people living next to the power plant that has basically become a mall. Yes, there's the library. And I'm sure everybody has everything to say about unhoused people. But if not for those unhoused people, basically this looks like, instead of being a power plant, it's a party powered by the poor. Because you know that none of the service workers in these stores or in this or in these restaurants get to live anywhere near this beautiful new quote unquote mixed use building.
Of course, we make that uh, important distinction between Sea Home District, Battery Station, and
Tate Modern.
Tate Modern, because what connects, or what does London have in common with Austin? I mean, I'm sure many things, but one of them is they are they have a huge river.
That's right.
Running in the middle of it.
In the middle of it.
And so the Colorado River in Austin is so huge, so wide. It holds so much water that it has its own. It had its own hydroelectrical power plant, as such as London. London has the Battersea power plant and what is now called or known as the Tate Modern. Those three buildings are very similar in respect to their former use, but nowadays they are repurposed into two different categories. The Tate Modern today is a museum, while as the Battery
It's a Bankside Power Station.
Yeah. Which one? The Tate Modern?
Tate Modern was the Bankside Power Station.
Bankside Power Station. That one, now it's a museum, free museum, which is another example of a repurposed building, like we were mentioning at the beginning of the episode.
It's got the addition.
It has the
on
addition
top.
on top, and on the side it has a tower, the Crook Tower.
That's right.
Yeah. That is one of my favorite works from the Swiss architectural studio Herzog and de Meuron. While as the Battery Station, it's also that one. The Battery Station, it's very famous because that building that has four chimneys, huge columns. That building is on the cover of one of the Pink Floyd's albums, and it has appeared in many movies, such as Children of Men.
It is very iconic when you look at it. Like, I mean, I took pictures of it because I was like, okay, no fair.
Yeah.
Like it captures your attention.
Yeah, I'm not sure who's the architect of that reconversion, because I don't like it that much because
it's a mall.
Yeah, I mean, and having been a symbol for and in the cover of one of Pink Floyd's albums and many movies, I will have expected that the building will have more of an industrial feeling to it, while in the inside it's just
a mall,
exclusive, high-end. Did I say exclusive?
Right.
Mall and
but a Frank Gehry building is next to it, Lalo.
Yes, there's a Frank Gehry building next to it. With very affordable apartments.
No, seriously, it's like I really felt like I was experiencing deja vu in London. I was like, okay, you made the argument that this building is gonna be used so that everybody can access it, and yeah, fair enough. We were able to access it. We were able to see the control room. You can see, sort of.
But the control room, you should mention that
is a bar.
It's a bar. And a lady, the hostess, asked us how many people were going to sit at the table, and you just mentioned, no, I want to see the control room.
Exactly.
And she let us in, which I was surprised actually by that. I thought she was going to be, oh no, it's for customers only. But it was it wasn't prohibited to see it, but psychologically it was.
Exactly, because it's behind a wall. Because there was engines that were on display behind walls. There were walkways where you could go up, but the escalators weren't working, and it was and you couldn't go up to see it. And so again, it's just another example of, well, we let you have access to the space. What more do you want? And I mean, okay, but it's like, I think of the meetings that people had, because power plants polluting is not a unique feature to Austin. I'm sure that several of the people who used to live in the neighborhood were like, so are you going to fix this? Are you going to make this not so terrible for us? And London's version of city government was probably like, yeah, sure. But then when they finally decommissioned the power plant, they were like, well, what do we do? Like, creating this space means that everybody doesn't get to live there. And that, to me, it's like, if everybody has to deal with the consequences and the problems, but not everybody gets to enjoy the solutions and the mitigation, well, then have you really done a good job? I would argue that Tate Modern is a much better way to refurbish a building. Especially using it as gallery space. There was a Black queer artist who just won the Pinkner Prize, and their exhibit was in one of the gallery spaces. There's also a lovely display that talks about the buildings actually in the London skyline, and they say exactly what the buildings are, yeah. which is why I took a picture. And I took a picture of it trying to get that information, but when you take a picture and you zoom too much, you don't actually get what you want. Yeah. But I did at least realize that it was to keep the fact that it was the Bankside power plant. But basically, and this was actually another building that had the addition on top of it. But it's like, again, that's what it should be. Everybody should get access to the solutions and the mitigation.
Exactly. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I wanted to make another distinction between the Battersea Station and the Tate Modern. When we were approaching the Tate Modern, we were crossing the Millennium Bridge, designed by architect Sir Norman Foster. Mm-hmm. We had the view of the building unobstructed. We had an unobstructed view of the building while we were crossing the bridge. And not only that, but in the building, there's a huge sign that says free entry. A museum for all. They change it every season, but there's a huge sign that says free for everybody. Come. While as when we were approaching the Battersea Station, we got off the metro station, and we were trying to get to it using Google Maps, but we couldn't see the building yet, even though it's huge.
Right.
It has 4 huge chimneys. Why? Because it was surrounded by many new apartment developments, unaffordable apartment developments, that what they sell, and that was actually in the renderings outside of the buildings, they were selling the view.
Right.
So these people who can afford those kind of places, they not only own the rights to that location, they own the rights to the airspace, because those buildings were blocking the view. We were sure that we were on the right way just because Google Maps said so, and also because we could see the battery station building in between some cracks or some voids in between these huge developments. And when we finally got to battery station, this building is surrounded by a circle. It's like a circular
Yes.
pathway, and this path is sandwiched between the battery station and these high density apartment buildings, luxury high density apartment buildings. It's incredible how much apartments they sold on those square meters.
Well, and remember when we were ready to leave and go somewhere else, we were walking. We asked the guards. They said, go that way. We're like, okay, great. We paused to take a picture. And they're like, no, you keep going that way. It's like, your time here is done. You have enjoyed the Battersea. Please continue moving forward. And it's like, I thought I was like, we were outside. And we weren't, it's not Lloyd's Bank. But at the same time, it's like, that's what the privatization of public space does.
Yeah.
It basically says, you don't get to stay.
Yeah.
We've decided that you're unworthy. Get out of here.
Because we noticed that you just bought a £4 Americano.
Yeah.
And so that allows you to stay here 15 minutes.
Exactly.
Before we ask you to leave.
Exactly. Maybe if you had more bags, you would have earned the right to go unobstructed. And so it's like seeing all this stuff in public space and seeing everybody glorify the privatization of public space. It really does beg the question of, why do you think that making rampant consumption is always a good solution? Everybody has history here. But, I'm an American, so I can't really take the high road because we just say, if it's not built in the last 20 years, tear it down. And then we pretend to talk to people about, well, what history do you want? So.
That's a very interesting and saucy point that you make, the distinction between heritage conservation in Europe and the United States.
Yeah.
But that will be probably the theme for another episode. We expected that we were going to talk for between 20 and 25 minutes. We extended a little bit, but
it's important. It's all
important. It's important, and we had a lot of meat.
And more importantly, we know that you're doing something else while you're listening to us anyway, which also makes us happy because maybe you're taking a bus or a train or an electric bus or walking somewhere, and that just feels good.
This is Stephanie Webb,
and this is Lalo Garcia, and we're off for today. All right, bye.
Bye.